All right, guys, welcome to the Buff Show. Today we're going to cover 10 questions to think about before buying a home. Me and Whitney, and this will be a good one. These are things that are very non-traditional, things that most people don't think about. Obviously, you should like the house and the neighborhood and everything like that before you buy, but these are 10 other items that I think most people don't consider.
Yeah, they're a little more uncommon as you kind of work into it.
Yeah. You want to lead us off on the first one?
Sure. So the first question would be, what's your water like? Like, is there a funky taste to it? Sometimes it matters a lot to people if it tastes different, if it's like, what's the water pressure? Is there hard water? Do you need a water softener?
Yeah. Well, my mother-in-law's house, so she's in Hennifer, and I cannot drink her faucet water. She's on a well, but it's just like, it's pretty bad. And so every time we go over there, they have to do like distilled or filtered water. Mm-hmm. And so I've seen people do like water tests on the homes before they purchase it. We're on a well. We did a water test, but I love well water.
I do too. I grew up on it.
Our well water is good, but every well water is different. Like my mother-in-law's, it's not great there. So just taking that into consideration, water is important, obviously. And you don't want to buy a house with like low water pressure or bad water, right? Yeah. Anything else you want to add in there on water?
I don't think so, no.
Oh. One other thing I'll throw in there, like secondary water. Do you have secondary water, irrigation water? Are you watering your grass and your lawn with the culinary water? If so, what's the gallons allotted for every month that you pay for? And is it going to be crazy expensive to water it in the summer, you know?
Right. If you surpass that limit, that threshold of your availability.
Yeah. So a lot of things to consider when it comes to water. Number 2, who are the neighbors? So every buyer I work with, I always encourage them, just go like knock on the door of the neighbors. You'll find out more about the seller in the house than you will by most inspectors, because they'll tell you everything that's going on. And you're doing 2 things. You're getting info on the house, but you're also seeing who you're going to be living next to. I've seen people move just because of their neighbors.
Got to scope it out. Make sure you like the people you're going to be by.
Yeah. So just that's like one of the best tips I can tell people is go meet the neighbors, see what kind of community it is. And that will give you a really good feel for if you'll fit in there, if you'll like it there, etc. So,
well, and like if there's an HOA, they can kind of contribute their 2 cents on how that is, or if it's well maintained,
right? What
you do have, or
for sure. Okay, you want to get number 3?
Yes. So, what are the 24-hour noise levels? It's good to visit properties at different times of day, just kind of see what you're going to be up against. Is it going to be super noisy in the middle of the day, or is there going to be friends partying next door? Again, going back to the neighbors, or is there a nightly rental nearby that could maybe have parties running all night?
So I've seen this too with like developments and construction. If you're buying a house in a neighborhood that has a lot of new builds going on for the next few years, like just being aware that is going to be the case. There was one property I sold a few years ago. We didn't realize, but there was a school going in close by, and it was like a few days after they bought it, they posted notice that they were going to break ground on it. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then they had to live with that going on for the next couple years. Yeah.
Everything.
The other thing to consider is there's a few train tracks going like through Morgan County, like Uinta area. Like, what does that sound like? Or the jets, right? I have had people sell in Layton just to get away from the jets.
Yeah, Hill Air Force Base does produce a lot of noise. So if you can't stand it, find a new place.
Well, and I lived in South Ogden for a while, and I remember I'd be on the phone, and they were so loud. Sometimes I'd have to, like, if I was on the phone, a phone call, I'd have to be like, "Can you like just hang on one sec, because I'm not going to hear you for like 10 seconds." And so, take into consideration what's going on in the areas: nightly rentals, construction, trains, jets, all of those things. If it's an area that allows nightly rentals, just be prepared that it'll probably be a little bit noisier on the weekends in the summer, things like that. Okay. How is the natural light throughout the day? So obviously, there's a lot of things that you can think about when you're considering the sun and its patterns with the house. How does it shine in through the windows and stuff? Is it going to really heat up the house? Our house that we bought in Eden had a ton of windows, and it really, like, you got a lot of heat through those windows. We love it in the wintertime. In the summer, it's hard because that room's always hotter. My wife loves it for like her plants and stuff like that.
Nice and steamy in there, huh?
Right. Yeah.
Our backyard faces the sunset, so east, I guess, west.
Or west, yeah.
West facing, sorry. Yeah. West facing. And it does, like, when the sun is setting, we have some doors and windows in the back of our house, and it really steams up the house, makes it really hot. And it's hard in the summer because we definitely have to be conscientious of opening windows in the morning and making sure that we're closing blinds at night. Like, you have a pattern. So
yeah. So if you have a barbecue and it's July, like today's the 17th, like it's super hot, like you probably wouldn't do it in your backyard. Mm-mm. So like we lucked out on our house, and these are things that I never really considered. But once you own a house that's facing east or west, like you're like, because our South Ogden house faced west. And it was just so hot, and that, like, we couldn't do a barbecue out there because the sun would just beat on you and roast you. But our Eden house is facing east, and so as the sun starts to set, like, we get tons of shade. And I'm like, we do barbecues out there all the time. So it's like, it's the perfect, like, we love that setup. But then you also have to consider what direction is the driveway, because I mean, really, the ideal setup I feel like in Utah is having a house that the driveway is facing west and the backyard is facing east, because then you get the shade of the backyard in the evening, but in the wintertime you get the sun on your driveway as it's setting, right? Because don't you want, I guess in the wintertime you want a driveway that's facing south or west, a mixture of those. If it's facing north or east, it will hold snow longer. I hope I'm thinking about these right, but
yeah, I think you've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So just things to think about when it comes to the sun, summertime barbecues, and snow removal in the wintertime. So our South Ogden house, again, that had a driveway that was facing north, and I would look across the street. My neighbors' driveways would be melted. Mine would be still covered in snow. So you definitely something to take into consideration, and that does help. So
for sure. All right, moving on. What's the internet speed like? A lot of times, well, actually, I feel like more recently, where the transition to more work from home has taken place, I feel like we are seeing a lot more people actually consider this question, or like what internet providers are in your area, because some people might have a preference.
Yeah.
And some areas, like in Eden, there's only one or two that are really available. And
yeah,
depending on your needs, it might not be enough speed, or where you were kind of more in the little bit of a rural area, kind of takes that speed
down. Yeah. Well, there's like, you have fiber. That's amazing. Plug in super high speed almost all the time. And then you have the satellite, which we're on in Eden. And it's like, if a storm rolls in and there's a lot of snow, like our internet just lags way bad.
Out.
Yeah. So definitely something to consider if internet is an important feature to your lifestyle. So, okay, number 6, what are the utilities and their costs? So a lot of people don't realize, but there's a lot of different utility providers when it comes to homes in Utah. I mean, you can be on culinary water, you can be on a well. Does it have secondary water? Is it connected with Dominion Energy? Is it Dominion?
They changed it recently. I can't remember what it's called.
Questar Gas or Dominion. Anyways, is it connected to natural gas? Is there propane? So these are things to be aware of, and what are their costs. For example, if you go into Bear Lake, like they don't have natural gas. Everybody's on propane. In the valley, I would say 25% of properties are still on propane. And that's not a big deal. You just have to be aware that there's going to be a propane tank, it's leased, and you have to fill it depending on your usage, every quarter, twice a year, once a year. It just depends on how big it is. Water is a big thing. If you're on a well, you'll have less, like you're not necessarily going to be regulated on water usage per se, versus if you're connected to a culinary water provider, a lot of those guys will meter it, and so you're more restricted on water and usage and stuff like that. If you're on a well, there's still restrictions in usage. It's just harder to track. Are you on a sewer or is it septic?
Yeah.
Every one of these, there's fees and things associated with it, and while you might not have sewer charges, you do have septic things that you have to be aware of. Like it needs to be pumped every, so many years. There's different kinds of septic systems. Some of them require inspections every year, So what are the utilities and their costs associated with it? So,
and another one like would be your garbage fees. Like
yeah,
most of, like they have a set one, but if you choose to recycle, if you need to get a recycling bin, and knowing what those costs are and the frequency that they're coming, so that you can kind of plan around that. I think that there's a lot of different things to consider with that as well. So.
Yeah, for sure. Number 7, you want to get that one?
Yep. So any future development plans in the area, it's a good idea to always just look around, see what's going in, do your research on the area, make sure that you feel confident that you're comfortable with what type of developments are happening and any new roads or commercial buildings, even if there's a park that's going in, if that's something that matters to you, and or even if you want to get involved in any of that.
Yeah.
Like it's good to know what's coming so that you can adequately prepare yourself for that.
Yeah, I mean, there was some land that just sold in Liberty, and they're doing like a new sewer treatment plant there. And some of our friends have a lot nearby, and it's just like you have to be aware of what's going on in the community, what changes. I mean, and things change so fast. It's like you'll never fully be able to fully plan on that. But just being aware of what the future county plans are and things like that will help you like mitigate some risk there, because it definitely affects what like your values, right?
Absolutely.
So, and there's a lot of development and things changing within the Ogden Valley, Morgan County. I mean, all over, there's a lot of changes and things happening. So, okay, number 8, does mail deliver there? It's a funny thing, but like there are properties in Eden, Liberty area that it's like mail doesn't deliver there. You have to get a P.O. box.
Mm-hmm.
And
they just can't, sometimes they just can't get up to those locations, or even if it's an HOA, they just chose not to allow mail delivery in a certain area, or I don't know. I think it's kind of crazy, but.
And some houses you'll have mailboxes, and other houses it's a P.O. box, and other houses it's like a mail house or like a mailbox cluster where there's, multiple mailboxes for that community. But just being aware of that, and are you okay with that? Do you get a lot of shipments from Amazon in these different places? Because if so, that's something you want to be aware of. So,
and oftentimes, sometimes the post office might not deliver somewhere, yet Amazon and all the other, or like your packages from UPS or FedEx or even like On Track will come directly to your house, but the post office won't.
Right.
Deliver, so
yeah, it is interesting how that works. Okay, number 9.
And what is your cell phone reception like? Again, I think this goes along with internet speed. Kind of, they work hand in hand a little bit. Sometimes your text messages can run off of your Wi-Fi, and that's great. But sometimes you might need to make phone calls, and if it's not a good area for your provider, or maybe finding out even which provider has the best signal in a certain area. Like there's certainly standout provider that has best service in Ogden Valley.
Yeah.
And, those are things that you have to ask around and investigate too, because some areas are great and some are not. So.
Yeah, I can think of a few areas where I'm like, if I'm going over here, I won't be able to send messages from that house. So it
Yep.
does help if you can connect to the internet. I think that boosts it, but still some real setbacks if you rely on your phone a lot. For some people, they're like, sign me up for that. No cell phone service there. We'll just get a landline and be good. My mother-in-law's cabin's like that. You don't get cell phone service there, and they have a landline, and it's pretty awesome going there. I like it.
Sometimes it's nice to unplug.
Yeah, but not if it's your primary home. So, okay, last but not least, what are the local school ratings? And there's multiple websites you can kind of research the schools, talk to the locals, see what they think about the schools, talk to people that have been to the schools. There's various places that you can research the school and kind of understand what education's offered there. Maybe you have a child that has other needs, trying to see what kind of programs are there. It's funny, like up in the valley, there's it seems like everybody does lacrosse, and that wasn't really like a thing when I was going to school, but now there's lacrosse teams and tournaments and all this, and it's cool to see things evolve. Same with mountain biking. Like now there's mountain biking teams and all that. So depending on what your kids are into, just see what is available throughout the local school system.
Yeah, absolutely. And alternative schools also, like, again, up in the valley, they've got that new, more like nature-inspired learning where they still, it's kind of like a charter, I think. I'm not exactly sure if they ever charter, but anyway, they have alternative schooling options too, and whether homeschooling is best for you, but also, it all affects your home in one way or another.
Right.
Dependent on what happens. So
yeah, for sure. It affects your family and how you're going to, like the lifestyle that you'll be living there. So hopefully these are good, like mental joggers for you guys to consider, like 10 things that aren't always front of mind when it comes to buying a house, but things that you should be aware of when it comes to buying a property and at least take into consideration. So anything else you want to add?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think we covered it.
Cool. Well, until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in for today's episode.